Hi, good afternoon. I'm Ben Parvey, the CEO of BlueSky Power. Today we're going to talk about adapting the energy landscape, solutions for the new normal. I want to thank FGS, Future Grid Solutions, for putting this together and connecting us virtually. With all the changes that have taken place, which have been many over the last few months, we're all working differently, and I think it's important to discuss how energy has impacted us, particularly during this time as we've seen a substantial impact of storms and other wildfires and other things that have impacted our ability to use our energy and connect virtually. So with the new normal, we're going to discuss how the new normal requires constant connectivity. So although some office buildings have backup for resiliency, including backup generation and clean energy, the remote workforce represents a new challenge. So as the grid becomes more unstable, the need for residential as well as institutional industrial resiliency becomes abundantly clear. So while people used to be confined in a close environment, now people are working at home. Oftentimes we realize there are connectivity issues, but also power outages impact our ability to stay connected and work productively. So in the past, you may have had backup power at an office building and not notice that there was a power outage due to a storm. Do we have the same type of resiliency at home that allows us to stay connected, protect our families, and be productive at work? So energy should never be a concern in times of uncertainty. Just when people in the United States were going into about 3 weeks worth of being in quarantine, there were widespread storms that spread from Texas all the way to the Carolinas that left 1.3 million people without power. Across the US, there are approximately 3,500 power outages per year that affect over 36 million people. Just last week, 3.3 million California residents were without power due to the wildfires ravaging that area. The electric grid is becoming more restrained and less reliable every day. So while we have a number of manufacturing and institutional clients that used to have no problems with their power, today we're realizing substantial power failures as well as voltage drops, frequency drops, and the requirement that the utilities upgrade the distribution and transmission infrastructure that seem to be failing and becoming more stressed on a regular basis. These end up being impacted by storms, as well as things like wildfires and instability and need to update infrastructure. So in these times of uncertainty, it's good to know that there's actually a solution. So the good news is that technology advancement, capital investment, and resilient microgrid technology have made staying powered up during times of uncertainty both achievable and cost-effective. So when we first started BlueSky Power over 12 years ago, solar then was over $8 a watt. Today we see projects that are $1.50 to $2 a watt. Batteries weren't at all in a state of commercialization and were only in testing and pilot projects. Today we realize abundant competition as well as new battery technologies, longer duration, and greater power capability and storage capability for not only grid-tied battery storage, but also distributed generation. Advances in efficiency and cogeneration, as well as fuel cells, have allowed thermal energy as well as electrical energy to be produced on site in a more cost-effective way, as well as increase the efficiency. So these systems are able to be smaller, produce more power, and keep not only institutions, but also commercial, industrial, and residential facilities operating in these times of uncertainty, whether it be from storms, pandemic, or wildfires, or even just grid instability. We're also realizing some of the outages that we've seen are due to increased demand during periods of high demand during the summer, and even the winter when we've had periods of immense cold and the power grid's not able to keep up. So we know that the systems are available and becoming more cost effective to allow us to implement microgrids. The technology is also improving dramatically, where we see the ability to communicate where solar, battery storage, cogeneration, fuel cells are able to communicate, control loads, and stay powered up either away from the grid, where they are not connected at all, where they're operating in parallel with the grid, where you're bringing in grid power, as well as distributed generation. So many entities that invest capital in the energy industry are now looking to deploy capital not just in utilities, transmission, distribution, and large power plants, but in distributed generation, bringing solar, battery storage, fuel cells, cogeneration to homes and industries, and deploy that capital in an effective way so that entities can focus on their core mission. So they don't have to invest in their energy infrastructure and staying operational through resiliency. Instead, capital is able to be deployed on clean energy projects today, and far more equity funds, banks, and institutions are looking to deploy capital to fund institutional as well as residential clean energy. So things like community solar, distributed generation, and microgrids are now able to be funded without institutions or entities or residents having to use their own money to pay for them. So when we combine these all into well-known technologies, I mean, solar and battery storage and cogeneration are not new technologies. They've been around for many years. But what is new is being able to island those off of the grid, have those technologies communicate with the grid and between each other so that the dependence on the electric grid can be eliminated entirely. We've now seen a number of facilities that operate completely independently of the grid, and we think now is the prime time to be able to deploy capital in that space, keep facilities operational, and allow people to have peace of mind that they continue to work, that their families are safe and protected, and that they don't have to sacrifice those things that they care most about when they have a power outage. So what does this mean? What is a decentralized world? What does it mean when we have microgrids all over the place that are able to have a serious impact on how we interact with our energy? Obviously, we know we want to see more clean sources of energy, but in a decentralized world where we don't have natural gas, coal-fired, oil plants, as well as nuclear, with no new fossil fuel plants, we're able to eliminate 2.8 billion tons of carbon dioxide. The wildfires in California, we well know, were caused by Pacific Gas and Electric, who's now been found criminally liable for knowing about their failing infrastructure and not taking corrective action to fix them and allow for safety for their customers, led to billions of dollars of property destruction, as well as the sad loss of life. A decentralized world means safety and security during weather events, hurricanes, storms, lightning strikes, flooding, wildfires. People can remain safe in their homes and know that their power will remain on and that they can provide for their family. Now, so many people are working at home, you're also able to stay productive, and outages become a thing of the past, which saves billions of dollars in operating costs that are lost. Entities like manufacturing facilities, food processors, they lose billions of dollars every single year just from power outages and blips, where they have to throw away food that was being produced, potatoes that were on the line have to just get thrown out. Manufacturing, they have to throw out things that are in the middle of being produced that end up not being able to be completed on a manufacturing line because they have a power loss or a voltage drop or a frequency irregularity. A decentralized world also means predictable, consistent energy costs. If you're not dealing with demand charges and fluctuating supply, capacity, and transmission charges, and you produce distributed generation on site in a microgrid, you know what your costs are going to be. You know what they're going to be every single day, every single month, every single year. That leads to simple and understandable billing. Both residential, commercial, and institutional customers look at an electric bill and have no idea what kilowatt hours are, what kilowatt demand is, what capacity and transmission charges are. If you look at an energy bill, it's the most confusing bill you get. There's not a single charge on there that makes sense to the average consumer. You're being billed for things that change constantly. Essentially, energy markets and the utilities are competing in marketplaces and buying power sometimes when it's low and sometimes when it's expensive, and then they're passing those market charges on to you. You can have power that's 2 cents a kilowatt hour, and sometimes it's $1,200 a kilowatt hour at peak times. So that variability in our electric bills is very frustrating to know that, an electric bill can range, in 1 month, be a certain amount and then be 3 times higher the next month. Having a decentralized world means that we're bringing simple and understandable billing to our customers. Additionally, it leads to better service. For entities providing cogeneration, solar, battery storage, fuel cells, and distributed generation directly to customers, you can service those customers when you know what their systems need and are monitoring them remotely. Utilities, a lot of times, have no idea when power is out due to an analog meter. They can't tell if power is at your home or your business or your institution. They can't tell when a power line is out unless people report it to them. It's an ancient, failing infrastructure from over 100 years ago. These giant metal towers that we see scarring the landscape are from a bygone era. They're from the Industrial Revolution. Creating ancient metal structures to transmit power hundreds of miles makes little sense when we have power that can be produced locally, avoid power outages, keep people safe in their home, and provide for stable, consistent power at a reasonable, predictable, and consistent cost. I want to thank you for joining me today and thank Future Grid Solutions for making this available.